Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Gina Gardiner and Friends. And today I'm joined by my great friend, Rachel Rosenberg. She's an amazing lady. I met her on a course when we were both doing a speaking program. She grew up in Detroit and began her career in art and fashion. Her desire for financial freedom and the quality of life took her to Chicago, achieving the title of VP of a finance company. Now, this is a lady who has experienced great challenge in her life. And this is her quote: "Always be thankful for the bad things in life as they open your eyes to see the good things you weren't paying attention to before." Rachel, it's such a thrill to have you on the program. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you.
Oh, thank you. So just give us a small idea of your story. You obviously have experienced significant challenge. So share that with us.
Okay. That basically after I moved to Chicago, I became a single mom of 3 kids. And I came to Chicago and had 3 kids and then became a single mom 18 years later. And after that, I was trying new experiences and I decided to learn how to snowboard. And it's been a little over 3 years. And I ended up suffering a traumatic brain injury through an accident that happened that snowboarding weekend. And the majority of the people who lived through it, many commit suicide or, best case, have other mental and physical challenges that keep them from ever doing anything again. And so I'm so grateful that I was able to meet a holistic neurologist, and it's almost 4 years now, and I am now, coming back. I've been working extremely hard to overcome and not get back to who I was, which was initially what my goals were. But as the quote that you shared explains, is that so many blessings, so many lessons have come out of the accident. My snowboard is in my living room. Like, I look at it all day, every day, to remind me of that. And I'm just so grateful. And somebody asked the other day if I wish that it didn't happen. And certainly I wouldn't want to go through the experience again by choice, but I don't have any regrets because I'm living a different life. I'm living a more grateful life. I'm in the moment. The relationships that I have had prior to and the new ones that I have now are just, just so on a different level. And it's just been the biggest blessing. And I hope to, inspire others to not give up when the odds are not in their favor,
It's
and keep
interesting.
hope.
I have so many guests, and so often they have an inspirational story where they have dealt with tragedy, with disability, with financial problems, a whole range of really intense challenges. And I can remember the first time we talked about your injury and how you thought you were okay, but you went off to casualty or the A&E department, and you were rushed in and told, "You've got to have an operation, you might not live, have you got a will?"
Yes.
And to come back from something which was as traumatic as that and be as positive as you are, I think is inspirational. But what strikes me is how many people, what is the difference between people like yourself and me and many of my guests who take the decision that the challenge is going to be the shift between the life that they were living and living a vastly richer and a more purposeful life, whilst other people stay victims to the circumstance and they never move past it. What do you think makes the difference?
There is an amazing book by Viktor Frankl, and it's called The Meaning of Life. And there is something called post-traumatic growth, but it's also one of the most phenomenal quotes in the book, and I can't remember it exactly, but basically it says that no matter how bad the circumstances are, and just to give you a relative scenario, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist in the Holocaust.
Right.
He was a victim in the Holocaust, but that was his profession.
Okay.
And so the book is so interesting, but the quote he shares is that in tragic, the most tragic situation, we have a choice. We decide how we're going to respond. And it's so many times, I know for myself, and I don't know about with you, you had a similar experience, but it's in hindsight.
Yes.
It wasn't the decision for a while. It was the fight just to live.
Yes.
And then to get back, and then to realize I don't want to go back. I felt almost like the snowboard became an exclamation point. There's a saying that says when you don't get the lesson doesn't go away until you get the lesson.
Absolutely. It tends to get bigger and bigger, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I believe it's a choice, and it was a choice. And when they specifically said, this is fatal and we'll do what we can to save your life, in front of my youngest child at the time, who was 9.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, they had no regard. And it was in that moment that I was like shifted from, being paralyzed to all of a sudden deciding I am going to fight like I've never fought. Like, this is not going to be the end. And, and so it's been quite a journey, but, again, so grateful. I mean, we met. My initial reason for doing the speaking class was because to share the accident, and it didn't even end up being what I shared.
No.
But that's how I met you. So no accidents.
No accident at all. I don't believe in accidents. Rachel, we were talking before about how accidents, significant trauma can act as the catalyst for change in your life. And I know that you fought tooth and nail. We left you in the emergency room before the break where you were told that this was life limiting and that they didn't expect you to survive. And here we are, some time later, when I know you still have your challenges, but you are living life to the full and helping other people to do the same. What for you made the difference?
It was in reflection, definitely. And one of the very big things I'd love to share, because I believe it could help others, is I prided myself on being self-reliant. I had 3 children. I worked 60 hours in corporate America, and many other things in addition. And I prided myself on never needing anything from anyone, or accepting or asking for help. And I had no choice in this situation. And of the people I could ask, the only one that could help me, was my father. And he was 82 at the time. And it was so hard. And to ask him to get me to my therapy, which was every day for 3 hours, an hour away. So to put that at, on my 83-year-old father, 82, and drive my kids to school, come back, get me, drive me an hour, wait in the car for 3 hours, drive me back an hour, go back and get my kids.
Yes.
But about a week in, I get in the car one day, and every day I got in the car, I was so uncomfortable. He didn't make me feel that way. It was my
No.
own. And he said, Rachel, this has changed my life forever. You have gotten me through the toughest time I've ever been in and never shared. You've given me purpose. I'm going to start crying. And he said, you gave me purpose. I have this renewed closeness to you and your children. And I have a reason to get up every day now. And it just, if I can inspire anybody to not do that, you allow people to feel important and to contribute. And our relationship is so much richer now because of that.
I think that's so important. And I'm smiling, not at your difficulties, but I've always loved to help. Okay. And it's always given me a great sense of satisfaction to be able to do something to make a positive difference. But I too, particularly, and even now at times, I struggle to ask for help.
Yes.
And I suspect that many people are in that situation, that they fear rejection, they don't want to bother people and so on. But I was on a course in California, and we were buddied up with a guy, with somebody. And my guy was called John. I can't remember his surname, but we spent 5 days together, and he was a really great guy. And one of the exercises we had to do was about giving and receiving help. And we were talking about giving help, and I explained how I just loved it. And he said, what about receiving it? Now, bearing in mind, I was wheelchair bound at this time. I could walk a couple of steps unaided, but not much more. And I said, I really struggle. And he said, what right have you, who loves to help other people, to not give others the opportunity to help you? And
wow.
It really made me think. I thought I was being, self-sufficient and tough. But I realized that if I enjoy and get so much out of helping people, then other people will. Anyway, fast forward to the end of the course. I live in the UK. At that time, you could buy different things in America, and it was very much cheaper to buy clothes. So I got a couple of days before I flew home, and I went to the local mall to buy some Christmas presents, because this was December. Now, the hotel was up a mile drive, and the mile drive was uphill from the main road. So I'd been shopping, and I came up the drive, and about halfway up the drive, my hired electric wheelchair died. My mobile phone wouldn't work. I'm sitting in the drive in my wheelchair. There's nobody around, and I think, what am I going to do? I can't walk. Anyway, a taxi came up the drive, and the taxi driver stopped. He spoke no English. I spoke no Spanish, but he could see the problem. So he parked his taxi, and he started to push the wheelchair up.
Oh my God.
Within a couple of minutes, another taxi stopped. He was flagged down by the first taxi driver, who parked his car, and he and the 3 people in the taxi got out, and they started to push one another. And by the time I got up to the hotel, there were 17 people pushing my wheelchair as a train. We were all crying with laughter, and my reluctance to ask people for help shifted significantly.
What an amazing story.
What a spectacle. It felt like the whole hotel was standing outside watching, but it really taught me a lesson.
And I wonder, it's making me think that is a common combination that many of us, because I too am the same. I would do anything. It's like the best thing in the whole world is to know that I can help somebody.
Yes.
And to not be, up until then, be able to receive it.
And I think for so many people, they receive their sense of self-worth by what they do for others. And so often they'll put themselves at the bottom of the priority, because they are so busy helping other people that they forget themselves. And I know I've been guilty of that. But it's reminded me that when I first met you and we were on this course to prepare for a TEDx and all of that, that your theme was put your oxygen mask on first. And it's the advice that airlines give us, isn't it? But how
Yes.
often we fail to put on our own oxygen masks, that we look after everybody else instead. So
Yeah. And yes.
talk me through why it's so important to you to put on your own oxygen mask first.
Well, this was another lesson, huge, from that came out of the accident as a giver like yourself. And I believe that so many of us, we wake up every day and, we're flying by the seat of our pants and we're reactive. We're running out the door. The kids need us. We have to make lunch. Our significant others or our animals or, and then all day we're just reacting, and just to get through the day, to crash and just be like, I made it through the day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that even this morning, when things get crazy and get overwhelmed and I get off my routine, it's life-changing to go back to it. And so what I want to share with everybody in securing your own oxygen mask is how important and how day-changing and life-changing getting up 1 to 3 hours earlier in the morning than you need to be. And for those of you that love your sleep and you're not morning people, I promise that after a week of doing this consistently, even as hard as it is some days to wake up and not hit the snooze button, your things are going to be so different when you start the day that way. And what's interesting to me is this has been a personal experience, but studies have shown that 90% of top executives in Fortune 500 companies and above, and 50% of all self-made millionaires wake up at least 3 hours before their actual workday begins. It's amazing.
So what sort of things do you think would make the difference in that period of time? How do you fill your batteries?
Okay, so to start off, to focus on for a minute what you have. 5 things maybe that you're grateful for. And it's so interesting because I write them down. It helps me to write them down. And sometimes they're people, sometimes they're experiences, sometimes it's the sun shining, but it just that alone puts your head in a different place. If you're a visionary person, which I am, I always have a vision board that I create each year, and that is near my bed. And I thank the universe or whoever you believe in as if it's already happened. Mm-hmm. Thank you for this amazing opportunity to do a TED Talk, to move to California, to bring the love of my life into my life. So and if you've ever read the book Think and Grow Rich, this is one of the exercises. And if you haven't, it's still one of the top sellers. Yeah. It's amazing. It's still so relevant. I can't believe it. And this is part of it, is speaking what you want every day when you wake up and every night before you go to bed. And when you go to sleep and wake up in the morning, both with gratitude and with focus on your big picture instead of all the little things you have to do that day that you're cranky about. The next thing is personal growth. And I've always been into personal growth, and it's everywhere now. Yeah. So I love to read, but if you don't love to read or you feel like you don't have time, there's podcasts and audiobooks and so many things choices to invest in yourself, and so many different topics.
Yes. Yeah.
And then definitely physical activity. There's not a question. And I know for many of us, I know myself, when I get out of this routine is when I reach over, when I wake up in the morning, whether it's at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., and I start with the phone first. And all of a sudden, I'm answering text and emails. And for many of us, now that the world is all one, there's a lot to get to in the morning because everyone on the other side of the world has been awake.
It's so important to me that for each person that you find what fills your battery, whether that's meditation. For me, it's getting out in the garden or nature and actually getting grounded and getting my hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I think, the exercise we know creates endorphins and the feel-good factor, and is a great antidote to stress. I collect gratitudes during the day and notice the little things to be grateful for. And to do that, you have to live in the moment. You can't worry about the past or be anxious about the future. You're just simply in that moment. So great plumbing, the natural world, my cat playing silly devils, there are a hug, a phone call, a nice cup of tea. All of those things are things to be grateful for. And they recalibrate the brain, don't they? So that the brain starts to look for the positive.
Yes. And then what ultimately ends up happening, Gina, is that you end up approaching the day in a proactive way, and you end up having so much more. We talked about giving. Yeah. You have so much more to give to your family, to your friends, to your team, to your clients, it changes everything.
Yes. Now, I'm very conscious that we've only got a very few minutes left to this show. I know that you have a blueprint. Tell us a bit about the blueprint, and I've got your website address so that people can go and access one. What's the blueprint about?
The blueprint is the three things that if you're in a situation and you're feeling overwhelmed or down or depressed, or you're losing hope, or you're losing faith, or maybe you're in transition and you're in a great place and you just don't even know what's next or what you want next. The power, this is a blueprint to reclaim your power, your positivity, and your possibility. And I believe that it's my blueprint. And I go back to it on a regular basis, and there's so much more to it, but I believe that it could be a gift and something that somebody could take in. And it's my gift to you and your listeners to maybe reclaim something that you feel like you've lost or you don't have.
That's brilliant. And if people go to the website, your website is www.rachelroselive.com, and that's all one word. So www.rachelroselive.com, and no spaces in that. Now is to say a huge thank you for being on the show. You're a great guest and a super friend, and thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've got a lot out of Rachel's story, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you.